Hello, everyone. Thank you again for tuning into the Legacy Marker Program interview. The Legacy Marker Program is dedicated to working with communities to preserve, protect, and in turn share their unique historical narratives. Today, I am pleased to sit here with a very good friend of mine, Miss Bertha Jackmond, who is a historian and member of Mount Zion A.M.E. Church. Yesterday, or 2 days ago, we had the unique opportunity to conduct a day-long preservation project at the church where approximately 15 students, college students, 13 college students, came over from Valley Forge Military Academy, and we worked together in the cemetery doing various things in terms of removing or safely lifting organic material from the surfaces, identifying missing fallen stones, collecting fragments. And the reason I'm doing a quick overview on this is that there'll be, in addition, as you're viewing this, photographs of the event. So we'll be having a conversation, and you'll also be seeing photographs of the project itself. What was neat about it was that we ended the day with a flag folding ceremony with the students, and it was befitting, giving honor to those who have fallen and those who had lived in the region, and as a good testament. So we're very excited. Bertha, very nice to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Since we're very good friends, tell the audience how long you think or actually, when was the first time we met?
The first time we met, I got an invitation from the Wagner Historical Society that there was going to be a demonstration of cemetery restoration in Wayne. And I'm not quite sure if I remember the name of the cemetery, but it sits behind St. John's A.M.E. Church, which faces Highland Avenue. And it's on the corner of, I guess that would be Conestoga and I'm not sure. Anyway, but the point is that I saw that and I said to myself, I need to go as the church historian of Mount Zion A.M.E. Church. And by the way, A.M.E. stands for African Methodist Episcopal. And we can talk more about that later. So the name of the church is Mount Zion African Methodist Episcopal Church in Devon. And when I arrived at the location, I saw Eugene, conducting his lessons and showing people how to clean stones and that kind of thing. And he and I spoke afterwards, and I invited him to my church, and he did come and looked at the cemetery, and we've been in great communications ever since then.
Really, it's been a great testament, because when we speak about preservation, we race by cemeteries, and if you get a chance to walk into the cemeteries, get up and close and personal, you realize in many cases there's a dire need for conservation. And so in subsequent years, there were a couple opportunities where we did some clinics, spoke to people at some of your anniversary gatherings, but the bottom line, we knew there was a need to do more. And also, I want to hear about your historic church, but one of the things we did in terms of the Legacy Marker Program is to try to reach out to professionals who might offer a helping hand to come in and provide guidance. And so Bertha was concerned about the stained glass windows, which are historic. Mm-hmm. So Marshall Sabatini did come over. John Marshall with Sabatini architectural firm, and came over and did an assessment. And the bottom line was that it was going to cost money, and like anything, that is still part of the process, how to raise funds for not only preservation efforts in the cemeteries, but the buildings themselves. The beauty of it is a testament, as of this past Monday, that we want to incorporate education for these young adults because it has an impact on them. They were very moved by it. Predominantly, the members were from Puerto Rico, mm-hmm. and we discussed situations where after tropical storms go through over that island, many times hallowed grounds are compromised. So they went from being mentees to becoming mentors, having learned what's going on. So let's hear more about the history of the church, and you do have an anniversary coming up.
Yes. The African Methodist Episcopal Church began back in the 1700s, the late 1700s, And the real quick story, and of course you can investigate it, is that he became the bishop, Richard Allen. He was a preacher who was a slave in Delaware. And he brought his own freedom and his brother's freedom. And he became a preacher, and he preached in different locations, Delaware, Pennsylvania, along the main line. And he became a preacher at the St. John's Methodist Church in Philadelphia. And he would lead his congregation at 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning before the other congregants came in. And at some point, and like I said, there's a lot to the history, and I'm just trying to be brief, but at some point, the black congregants were kneeling in prayer. And several of the trustees of the church came over and said, well, you can't pray here, you need to move. There had been some construction going on in the building, and they were supposed to be relegated to another location. And the parishioners said, well, we'll move when we're finished praying. But of course, as it goes, that they were forced physically to move. And at that point, Richard Allen, and Absalom Jones, they decided to lead most of the black congregants out of the church that day. And eventually, they ended up creating their own churches and actually went to two separate directions, but they were still part of the community and the organization that they founded. And then in 1860, now this was in 17, and some of the years are debatable, but let's just say 1794 when this happened. By 1816, the African Methodist group decided to have a conference. And there were groups that came from Pennsylvania, Baltimore, and a couple other cities. They met down in Baltimore, and that's when the whole church itself began. And Richard Allen was elected to be the bishop, the first bishop at A.M.E. As of right now, and he also founded the Mother Bethel Church in Philadelphia. That's the home church of the whole African Methodist Episcopal denomination. So, since it was Philadelphia, he was the founder of the first Episcopal district. The church now has 19 Episcopal districts around the world. And they meet every 4 years. That's their major meeting every 4 years, but each district has an annual meeting. So we are part of the first district. So now, where do I go from here?
Because the overview is important, and that's what this is all about, particularly for our audience and the mission in general, because it's one thing to do a preservation project, or if people ask for a basic overview of the church, many times it's a pamphlet or a brochure, but the reality is, and particularly with your church, there's this incredible rich history. One of the things, and I wore my American Legion shirt today because some of the pillars in the motto for the American Legion is inclusive of education and youth. And most importantly, I think that's what this project played out on. Yes. I am a member of Bateman Gallagher 668 post here in Wayne, and outreach projects, the mission continues as veterans. So having the opportunity to do this, and I really wanted the college students also to know that the Legion Post here is in town and what we're about, because we're always looking for members, men and women, to participate. Most importantly also, I guess, on the other category was that there are internments of colored troops who served during the Civil War. And so particularly for me as a veteran, and I'm a big flag nut, and so anytime a flag's knocked over or just going by the grave, you look at these individuals, and it could be anybody that's there, but they have a story, and that's the narrative that needs to be preserved and protected and learned about, and to me, I think in sacred sites like that, there's something very powerful about that. Tell me about the interments at your cemetery.
Well, the interments at our cemetery, as far as we know, we have 19 named Civil War veterans. They were called USCTs, United States Colored Troops, or United States Colored Infantry. It just depends, I suppose, on the regiment. We have 19 named veterans in the cemetery. We have World War I and World War II veterans also. And part of my introduction, when I spoke with the young men that came on Monday, I was telling them about the cemetery, telling them about the history of Mount Zion, which, by the way, is the oldest African American church of any denomination on the entire main line, and meaning from the entire main line, meaning from Overdrook out to Paoli and a little bit past.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because
Yes.
I thought that was very interesting.
Yes, we are the only African American church of any denomination that has a cemetery on the entire main
Also
line.
very interesting.
Which is why this is just so important. And it's not just the African Methodist churches on the main line that revere that cemetery. The other churches do too, because when you look at the names in that cemetery and the founders of the church, their relatives are all over the place, descendants. So we're very, very happy to say that we have that situation. And by the way, and I'll get maybe into more of this a little bit later, but we are also the first African American entity in Tradifton Township to be on the National Register of Historic Places. In the state of Pennsylvania, there are so many thousands of what they call resources, and those resources are those who have been deemed those who have been deemed to be on the National Register. Out of about 3,000 or so of those, there are about 24 that can definitely be named as African American entities. Now there are others, but it's just a matter of how they're coded in the computer system. We're pretty sure that there are more, but something that said African American or Black American or whatever, there are about 24 of them. And Mount Zion A.M.E. Church and Cemetery are listed as one of those at least 24.
And the church, the old church itself, is also considered to be historically significant?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
And the reason for that is, I stand on the shoulders of so many folks in Mount Zion A.M.E. Church. You know, I am the church historian, and I'm, you know, getting my name out there. But I stand on a whole bunch of folks who started before me. And I say that to say that apparently for about 40 years, from what I understand, there were starts and stops to try to get on that National Register. Mm-hmm. And, you know, letters and applications and so on and so forth, and different things happened. But it just so happened that the combination of us receiving our first female pastor in 170 years, Reverend April Martin, she came in July of 2009.
She's a wonderful person.
She's a dynamite, and she's kept us on our toes all these years. But the thing about it, I realized it took the combination of a pastor who cares, who wants to move forward. It took the combination of certain people in certain places, such as myself, because I used to live out of state, coming back to the church. It took a combination of just different resources and having certain people, consultants, helping us. And for 6 years, we were in the process of working on that application. And I understand 6 years is a short time to get on the National Register. But the other significant part of this is that they included the cemetery. And from what I understand, it's sort of difficult to get a cemetery listed on the National Register. And so, like I said, there were a lot of pieces involved, but we were just fortunate that all these things came together at that particular time.
Can you tell me, tell the audience about the church? Because the door was not open the day we were there, but I think you opened the door and it's red carpeting, I believe. inside the church itself, the old church.
Oh, the old church, yes.
Old church.
Yes, yes.
Describe what's there.
Okay. The old church building is the original building. It never really shut down entirely. It was built by the members, and a lot of those members are in the cemetery. The first pastor of the congregation itself, which was formed in 1849, was Reverend Nelson Hughes, who was also a United States Civil War soldier. He's buried in the cemetery, and so the congregants met at the home of some people in the area, and they bought the property in 1856, January 1856. Just so happens that the person they bought the property from was an abolitionist. The Wilberforce Abolition Society, I believe that's the name of it, founded at the Baptist Church of the Great Valley. So it's just all these connections, and like I said, or these little fingers that could go off, to each one of them. But I found that to be very interesting. The
whole process, I think, of how the church evolves, its story is very interesting. And I think I'd like to jump right into a little bit about your experience with these young men on Monday, because we're talking about a life presence there of individuals, young men going around and doing projects, and they were all stationed out into different areas. Tell me about your experience with that.
Yes. Well, my experience, first of all, I just have to thank you, Eugene, for being consistent with working with us over the years. We've done other things also in the cemetery several years ago. When the young men came into the vestibule of the new church, I had the opportunity to give them some background about the church, about the cemetery, the significance of the church and its standing in the community, and the significance of them being there that day to help with the upkeep and the restoration of the cemetery. And this is something that the church has been wanting to do for many years. And so I tried to let them know that they have a major role in this historical moment for the church, actually. So there were 13 of them, and from my understanding, 11 were on the college, Valley Forge Military College baseball team, and then there were 2 others that were recruited, so there were 13 altogether. Some of them didn't speak English very well, so while we were talking to them, or while we were working in the cemetery, you can hear the translations going on, which I thought was, really nice. It was just nice to see. And so they went out, and they started working. They realized that when Eugene introduced himself to them, he explained briefly what was going to happen, how it was going to happen, and that they were going to be part of an archaeology dig, which I think helped them to realize that when they did find something, it was special. It wasn't just a little piece of junk.
The fragment tabs. And I think there's 1 or 2 photographs that are included. And just to highlight, the one young man by a veteran's grave found a marble. And we gathered around, and I had mentioned that many times near a grave of a child I have found marbles, but in this case it was an adult stone. So I posed the idea that possibly this veteran passed, and it was a family member, maybe a child, that brought the marble and placed it there. But we also found fragments of bottles, and what was interesting, against almost like history detectives, we took all the pieces and put them out, and we found some basic labels on there. And one of the students went online and found out exactly what that bottle looked like, and it was early 19th century, I believe. Okay. The bottle itself. And I'm watching my time, so I want to make sure I cover all of the topics that I wanted with you today. Yes. At the end, we did a flag ceremony, which I think worked out very well. Everybody was issued white gloves, and there's a really good photograph there of the gentleman standing with the old church in the background. And a good friend from the church where I sing on Sundays, Ed for Lower Marion Baptist Church, was there, and he wrote me a very nice email and said how much it meant to him to speak to these students who are committed to something that's important. We had people driving by and slowing down. A gentleman from the Enquirer who was supposed to go cover the flyers came in. He took photographs. Tradifrin TV came in and conducted interviews. And the beauty of media in this case is to share success stories. America wants and needs success stories. This is exactly what this is all about. And it's really just the beginning. Tell us briefly a little bit about the Hallowed Grounds Project, because just on one note, one of the meetings, the conferences I've attended for the Pennsylvania Hallowed Ground Project, and Bertha will tell you what that is, I said to many of the participants, I said, we need to start a pilot program, which we can use as a means to share with other churches across Pennsylvania. And this is now the third year, and I said, Bertha, we now have the pilot project. We have created, we have video, we have film, testimonials. This will be our turning point. So we accomplished a lot, but tell the audience a little bit about the Hallowed Ground Project.
Well, the Pennsylvania Hallowed Ground Project actually began back during the sesquicentennial of the Civil War. And that was, how many years ago was that? That was 2003, somewhere in there. But the point is, what happened is that...
When I say because that was a while ago. I can't remember
yes,
exactly.
It doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but it really was.
Yeah.
And it began as a project of trying to list all of the cemeteries in the state of Pennsylvania that had colored soldiers, Civil War soldiers. And so it grew out of that into cemeteries that had Civil War soldiers and just African American cemeteries in general. And last year, Mount Zion was very, very proud to host their annual meeting in October of last year. And we had some fantastic information that was given out, and Tradifrin Township TV was there to record it. And if you go on Tradifrin Township television, there's videos by demand, and you could look up the Pennsylvania Hallowed Grounds Project. That was, I believe, October 6th of last year, and there were 3 speakers. One was from Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission. One was, she's the president of the African American genealogy group. And then the other gentleman was from Dickinson University, or University of Dickinson, and he was very much involved in all this. So you can go and see it on demand for yourself, which I think is fantastic. And so as part of the follow-up what Gene was saying, at that meeting, Gene also mentioned about, we should be continuing and doing different projects throughout the state. And his focus was to begin somewhere, and somewhere was Mount Zion A.M.E. Church as a pilot project to be used as a jumping off point for other projects across the United States. The whole idea is, it's nice to talk about these things every year, but unless we do something, we just need to do something and improve. And I also just want to mention very quickly, if I can, or do you want me to wait for a minute for me to talk about the anniversary? And can I talk about that now?
Yeah, we have a couple minutes, yeah.
Okay, all right. Since the church Mount Zion A.M.E. was founded in 1849, this Saturday, September 21st, we are very pleased to celebrate our 170th church anniversary. And it's going to start off at 10 o'clock in the morning. Senator Andrew Dinnerman is going to present a proclamation to the church, and we're going to be in the old church building, which has been open and we've used every now and then. He's going to do that, and then that kicks off the tours of the cemetery and the historical church. There will be displays in the church and so on. And the idea is the work that we were doing in the cemetery on Monday is that trying to map out the cemetery itself so we can identify the headstones and give people an idea, well, where is this headstone, and where is this one, and where's that? So we're going to have that. We're also going to include a list of the names that are on the historical stained windows back in the 20s. Families dedicated each stained glass window to a loved one. So we have those names. There will also be a separate document with the complete history of Mount Zion A.M.E. Church. And all of these things will be provided along with the souvenir program booklet that's coming, that will be there on Saturday. So anyway, we're going to have the cemetery and historic church tours. At 12 noon, we're going to go into the new church downstairs on our fellowship hall, John T. Tennell Hall, and we will begin the worship service there. In the middle, we will stop for a banquet, and then after the banquet, the bishop of the first district, Bishop Ingram, will be the keynote speaker. And then there'll be presentations and comments and so on, and then the day will be over. But the point is, if you want more information about this momentous celebration, you can look at our websites. Just look up Mount Zion A.M.E. Church, Devon, and you can click on our website, and there'll be some more information on there as to how you can attend.
What's very exciting about this, and I'll just share that there was a lot of work, as always, that you have to do behind the scenes to get something like this started. And so if we could have done time-lapse photography on Monday, you would show almost like bees moving around to the different stations and activities going on. And at the very end of the day, when everybody had departed, Bertha and I were standing there, and there was this sort of a lull, a quiet from a day of lots of activity. And it just showed how it is such a wonderful, peaceful place with lots of history. And now that when you go out, and I encourage the audience to do that, to visit this site, you'll see something very special. But like anything, the church is certainly receptive to professionals or entities that may want to step forward to help with their broader mission. The church itself does need help, financial help, to deal with the stained glass windows. Again, any future project, we're hoping to incorporate students in this type of work. So we want to thank Studio 21, obviously, for providing this opportunity. I want to thank Bertha for this wonderful opportunity and continued friendship. To the audience, education, preservation, stewardship, I'm Eugene Hough for the Legacy Marker Program. Thank you.
Thank you.